One day, a boy named Arav boarded a train to travel across India. As the train moved from one state to another, he sat by the window, amazed by what he saw. The green fields slowly turned into deserts, and then into hills and forests. With every new station, something changed. People wore different clothes, cooked different kinds of food, and spoke in languages Arav had never heard before. He looked out and saw signboards in strange scripts. Some he could read, others looked like beautiful drawings. In the train itself, people from different backgrounds sat together, some from the north, some from the south, each sharing their own stories, snacks, and smiles. Arav realized how different yet connected everyone was. A curious child, he once asked his grandfather, "Why is India so different from place to place?" His grandfather smiled and told him about a big survey called the People of India Project that was done by the Anthropological Survey of India years ago. They studied 4,635 communities across the country and found that Indians speak 325 languages in 25 different scripts. That amazed Arav even more. They also found, said Grandpa, that many people don't live where they were born. They've moved to other cities or villages, which is why you'll find people with different customs even in your own neighborhood. As the train journey came to an end, Arav looked around once more. He now understood that India was like a huge colorful quilt, stitched together with different traditions, foods, clothes and languages. And that's what made it so beautiful. Arav sat with his grandfather, watching a show about Indian cuisine. "Grandpa," he said, "the food is so different everywhere. There must be thousands, if not lakhs, of different dishes you can taste in India." His grandfather smiled. "You're right about the variety, Arav. But a lot of those different dishes are made with the same basic things. For example, some cereals like rice, barley and wheat are common to almost every part of the country. So are millets such as pearl millet, bajra, sorghum, jawar, and finger millet, ragi, and pulses such as various kinds of dals and grams. All of these," his grandfather continued, "are called staple grains because they are the basic food for most Indians. And it's not just grains. Some common spices such as turmeric, cumin, cardamom, and ginger are also used throughout the country. We could continue this list with common vegetables and common oils too." Grandpa patted Arav's head. "So you see, the same ingredients, that's the unity, can be used in a number of combinations, that's the diversity, to prepare an endless variety of dishes. Just like the people in our country." Arav was at home, looking through his grandmother's old chest of clothes. He pulled out a long, beautifully patterned piece of fabric. "Grandpa," he said, holding it up, "look at this. It's so different from the other clothes." His grandfather smiled. "That's a sari, Arav. You're right, every region and community in India has developed its own styles of clothing. But if you look closely, you notice a commonality in some traditional Indian dresses. The sari is a perfect example." He explained that the sari is just a plain length of cloth, yet it's a type of clothing worn in most parts of India. "They are made from different fabrics," Grandpa said, "mostly cotton or silk, but nowadays synthetic fabrics too. The one you're holding might be a Banarasi, or perhaps a Kanjivaram, or a Paithani. We have many more kinds of silk saris like Patan Patola, Muga, and Mysore, and even more kinds of cotton saris. Altogether," he continued, "this unstitched piece of cloth comes in hundreds of varieties. They are produced by different methods of weaving and designing. Some designs are part of the cloth, while others are printed after the cloth is woven. And of course, there are endless variations in the colors, which are produced from many kinds of pigments." Grandpa then showed Arav a picture in a book. "The sari has a long history, my boy. This stone relief from Vaishali goes back a few centuries BCE. We've been wearing this type of cloth for a very, very long time." Arav looked at the sari again. He now understood that this single piece of clothing was like a beautiful thread that stitched together the diverse cultures and history of India. There are many ways of wearing the sari, as they vary from one region to another or from one community to another. In fact, new ways of draping it are still being invented. But in the end, it is a single dress, the sari. In past centuries, several travelers to India marveled at its simplicity, economy, and the diverse ways in which it is worn. In addition, women often put the sari to many uses beyond that of a dress. The 6 pictures in Fig 8.4 above illustrate a few such creative uses. There is an immense variety of festivals in India. You may have noticed that a few common ones are celebrated across India almost at the same time, though they have different names. We will take just one example, Makar Sankranti, which marks the beginning of the harvest season in many parts of India, on or around January 14th. The map shows the different names of similar festivals across India, about the same date. Arav was sitting with his grandfather, flipping through a book of fables. "Grandpa," he said, "I know this story. It's about a lion and a jackal. But the book says it's from something called the Panchatantra." His grandfather smiled. "Indian literature is like a treasure chest, Arav, and it's extremely diverse and abundant. The Panchatantra is one of our most famous treasures and a perfect example of unity in diversity. It's an ancient collection of delightful stories that use animals as the main characters to teach us important life skills." He explained that the original text, written in Sanskrit, is at least 2,200 years old. "But its stories have not stayed in one place," Grandpa said. "They have been adapted into almost every Indian language and have traveled far beyond India, all the way to Southeast Asia, the Arab world, and Europe. It's estimated that about 200 different versions exist in more than 50 languages." "So one collection of stories became many?" Arav asked, connecting the idea to what he had learned before. "Exactly," Grandpa replied. "That shows how a single great idea can unite people across cultures and time. And you know, the most striking examples of this are our two great epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata." Arav's grandfather had just mentioned the Ramayana and the Mahabharata as the most striking examples of unity in diversity. "Tell me more about them, Grandpa," Arav said, his eyes wide with curiosity. His grandfather explained that these two epics are some of the oldest stories in the world. For more than 2,000 years, he said, they've been adapted into different languages and regional literatures. But even more amazing are the countless folk versions that exist. He told Arav about a scholar who did a survey in Tamil Nadu and found about 100 versions of the Mahabharata that have come down to us in folklore forms. "Can you imagine how many there are in all of India?" he asked. Many communities have their own versions of these epics. They have preserved legends connecting their own history with these great tales. Grandpa explained that this is especially true for tribal communities like the Bhils, the Gonds, and the Mundas. They have their own versions passed down orally, often with stories of how the heroes of the epics, like the Pandavas, their wife Draupadi, or even their cousin Duryodhana, once visited their regions. Arav realized that these epic tales weren't just single books, but were like a great river, flowing through every part of India, picking up different stories and legends along the way, yet still remaining the same river at its heart. Arav's grandfather put a hand on his shoulder. "You remember that Big People of India project I told you about at the beginning of our journey?" Arav nodded. "Well, its director, an anthropologist named K.S. Singh, said something very special about the Mahabharata. He observed, there is hardly a place in the country which the epic heroes such as the Pandavas did not visit according to folklores. The same could be said of the Ramayana. Think about that, Arav," Grandpa continued. "For centuries, these two epics created a dense web of cultural interactions across India. This same idea of unity and diversity can be seen everywhere, even in our classical arts and architecture." Arav thought about everything he had learned. The different languages on the train, the many dishes from the same grains, the countless saris from one cloth, the single festival with many names, and the epic stories that belong to everyone. He finally understood. "Remember this," his grandfather said, giving him a final wise smile. "Indian culture celebrates diversity as an enrichment, but never loses sight of the underlying unity which nourishes that diversity."
Students, is the lesson clear to you? Now be back soon to attempt the book exercise in our next video. Bye.